Here we are. This is the Comedy Driven Life podcast. We have today some people who are regulars. We've also got a special guest, Alice Fraser. We will find out a lot about her when we talk to her properly. So we're going to introduce ourselves to her at the same time because we're all meeting her for the first time, apart from Phil. So Phil might do a lot of the work. Who knows? So without any more delay, we'll probably just add some stuff in post afterwards, just in case. Let's all welcome Alice Fraser. Do some clapping and stuff.
Yay.
Yay. Oh, good. There we go.
Yay.
Hello.
It's like you were,
So
welcome.
good to meet you.
It's lovely to meet you too.
Thank you. Should we introduce ourselves?
Yeah, we should. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are you, Tandy?
My name's Tandy. I am a comedian, but don't do any work. So, and it's lovely to meet you. We listened to your Edinburgh show from 2019 today. Very impressive and very funny, and we've just really enjoyed it. So, and my husband Dan is on as well, and he's a massive fan of the Bugle, and so he introduced me to that. So I caught up with that yesterday as well. So yeah, it's just a real pleasure to meet you.
Oh, thank you. You've been doing homework on me, which is odd because most of my podcast guesting on other people's shows is trying to convince them to watch my stuff. So I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to do now.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you.
Well, we've got Phil to blame for all of that, because Phil is clearly the biggest fan.
Stalker. Oh yes, fan. Yeah.
Well, I think I've made it quite hard for my stalkers in that I put a lot of work out, so it's almost impossible to, I think, keep up with everything that I do. Like last year, I did a daily satirical podcast set in an alternate dimension, and also there's weekly stuff and monthly stuff, and then I have a Patreon, and I have my Tea with Alice podcast. There's way too much stuff, I think, for any normal stalker to get across.
They're like, don't stalk her, it's really hard work.
Yeah. Oh, it's exhausting. She's not a mystery at all. She's everywhere.
And you're just a regular stalker, aren't you? You're just a regular...
I'm just a regular stalker. I'll stalk anyone, really. Particularly with a dear stalker.
Small fee.
Yeah. So I'm Dan. I'm Tandy's husband. I think I'm the only non-comedian on here. I've not done any stand-up yet. Everyone else has here. I've done some online stuff. I did the UK pun-off show a few weeks back. So I love the puns. So I love the Bugle. But I'm the only amateur here. Everyone else is much more professional than I. But Tandy and I are working on a series together with some of these other guys that hopefully will come out in the near future.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
That's Dan. And Andy?
Well,
I kicked you out before, so behave yourself, remember?
Yeah, well, I haven't done as much research as Tandy, but that's because when I haven't really been keeping up with the correspondence, and when people said, don't forget we've got Alice on the podcast, I just thought it was my older daughter, Alice, who's 8. And so I'm only really here to tell you to go to bed because you should be in bed by now. And also to ask where you've stolen and hidden my AirPods. So if you could answer either of those questions, I can zoom out quite happily.
Okay, well, the answers to the questions are it's Sunday morning, 9 o'clock. Arguably, I should be in bed. And the second thing is, where did you last have them?
No, you hid them.
Oh.
You are grounded. So, I mean, I've had all these conversations planned, and now it's this, well-known comedians turned up. So my face is red. My face is red.
Luckily, that curtain behind you hides it, Andy.
Yeah, that's right. It's great to have you on, Alice, and it's nice to meet. It's nice to be able to say the word Alice without, using massive amounts of decibels and making it a reprimand. It's so nice to just say the word Alice in the way it was intended.
See, children always, but I'm never sure about children because it feels like they're mostly quite annoying. Like babies, I love, and people have always accused me of being clucky and wanting a baby, and it's like until it's about 3, and then I have no interest in small children.
Yeah, particularly if you're going to call it it. I think that's something where you should just like carry on with the comedy. It seems to be going quite well, or maybe start with a cat or an otter or something like that. But certainly, you're not ready for babies. Not my.
I'm ready for
opinion.
babies. I'm just not ready for children.
Yeah, that's not my medical opinion, by the way. Don't quote me on that. I don't want to be on the news tomorrow. You know, some kind of anti-Alice Fraser campaign.
Well, I have a twin brother who's already had children, so I feel like our genetic line is moving forward.
Oh yeah, it's fine.
I was going to say, Alice, your niece is 2 or coming up to 2, isn't
Yes.
she? So she's got another year for you to be interested. Then.
Yeah, she's 2 years old. She's about 8 feet tall. She is the best baby in all the land, and yeah, I adore her. But I assume that when she gets to be about 3 or 4, I'll completely lose interest.
Fantastic.
You started off as a lawyer, didn't you, Alice?
I did start off as a lawyer.
What made you go into comedy from there?
So I went into one of the big top tier law firms here in Australia. And after a while, I realized that I did not value money as much as I valued happiness.
But
that
Alice,
was it.
Money is the only thing that makes you happy, right?
Well, I mean, this is the thing with being a lawyer. You bill in 6-minute increments, so you have to account for your time in 6-minute increments, and you know how much that time is worth on the paper. And I would look at that, like I would look at my invoice, and I'd think, what would I buy with that money? And the answer was always, I would buy that time back. So I think of myself as a very well-paid comedian who's spending a lot of money on spare time.
How have you found like comedy in like comparison to being a lawyer? Like what kind of, how does it compare like lifestyle wise?
So that's a really interesting question. So the thing that drew me to law was the same thing that drew me to comedy, which is sort of analytical and deconstructive thinking. The thing that I like about comedy that was really hard in large law firms was a sense of having control over your own destiny and control over what you're paying attention to and what you're interested in. Also, you know, the idea that you're making people's lives better. And I genuinely believe that our legal system is a beautiful thing. It's an incredible construction that many people fought and died for, and it's a wonderful idea. Even the idea that everyone should have access to the same justice, even when it's not fully realized, even just having that idea is a huge thing for a society, and I think it's worth defending, and I think it's worth fighting for. But I do not think it's worth working in a large law firm as a young graduate lawyer for.
And when you started doing comedy, did you have a sudden moment where you were like, oh, this is where I should be, or like this is working, or even like a particular place that you felt well received and you just love performing there?
So for me, at Sydney University, which is where I went, they have these things called the faculty reviews: law review, arts review, engineering review, medical review, and they are sketch comedy shows. And you do them for fun, and they're interesting. And I was doing one, and I was quite successful writing comedy for them. And I was having an argument about a joke with somebody. And I was brought up Buddhist. I was brought up as a carer for my mum who was sick. I'm a very chill person. I get on, I let things go over my head. I'm perfectly happy for people to do what they want to do most of the time. If I disagree with them, I'm usually like, well, you know, is it worth fighting about? Is it worth arguing about? But with this one particular comedy sketch, I was slamming my fist on the table and going, it's not funny enough to justify the joke. It was a pun on a gardening renovation show that they had going around that was called Backyard Blitz. And these people had done a sketch where they pulled file footage from the Holocaust, and the joke was that it was Backyard Blitzkrieg. And like on one hand, my grandmother was coming, who survived the war and was a Holocaust survivor, Jewish lady. And I thought, I don't want her to see that sketch. I think it will upset her. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, the thing that was really making me angry was that it just wasn't funny enough to justify a 3.5-minute sketch. And I thought, wow, I really have a strong opinion about this. And it was an unusual feeling for me to really be like determined and certain, in my opinion, rather than, very equanimous, very equivocating, very like, well, you see it one way, I see it another way. I really was like determined that I was right, which is an unusual feeling. So I think that was the first time I thought, oh, maybe this is for me if I care this much about it.
Wow. Right, our only other Australian friend, really, not because we don't like them, because we don't know any, is an Australian comedian called Nathan Lang, and he was in Neighbours, right? So I'm wondering, is it racist to ask an Australian if they were in Neighbours? Like,
so far we have 100% hit rate of getting that right. So.
I'm afraid I'm not beautiful enough to have been in Neighbours, but I did get signed photographs of the whole cast of Home and Away from 1991, I think.
Wow.
The glory years.
Because I won it as a prize in the MS Readathon. So MS Readathon, I don't know if you have it over there in the UK. It's like a reading competition.
For people with multiple sclerosis, is it all?
Yeah, you raise money for people with multiple sclerosis. In retrospect, my mum taking me round to the people to ask for money and standing in the background on her walking stick might have been a heavy-handed tactic. At the time, I did not realize that I was being essentially the emotional equivalent of the mafia. But I also read a lot of books, and then I won this. It was a trip on the Bounty, which was a sort of a recreation colonial sailboat.
Wow.
And with the cast of Home and Away, and I didn't know who any of them were, but I accepted all of their signatures because I thought, well, who signed? I mean, it's a very odd thing. Who signs a picture of their own face and gives it to you? But that was, if you remember, that was how it used to be done. And I didn't want to be rude to them and tell them that I didn't know who they were. So I still have that somewhere.
The new signature now is just a selfie, but
yeah.
Well,
That's right.
At least
that is a bit like the whole Home and Away cast saying, "Can I get a selfie with you?"
Yeah.
Just
the nice thing about it is that nowadays, if someone wants to take a selfie with you, you never know how you're going to look. Yes. Whereas if you've got pre-printed headshots of yourself looking like extremely glamorous through an 80s Vaseline filter, and then you can just sign it and pass it on, and they can draw a little stick figure of themselves in the corner if they want to be part of it.
The pandemic mask, I guess, enables you to take a bit of control back, where you can, I mean, maybe you just put the full face on of what you'd like to look like in a selfie. So when you're going to take a selfie in the future, selfie face.
Yeah.
You get to hijack.
We get one of those shields, those face shields.
Yeah, just
so you look like a bunny rabbit.
Yeah. Or,
I'm really enjoying wearing the mask for that. Like, I feel like I don't have to worry at all about going shopping and putting more makeup on and stuff, because I'm anemic, so I look very sick if I don't wear makeup. And everyone's always like, "Oh, you don't need to wear makeup," but then they're the same people that say, "Oh, are you okay?" So it just doesn't fill me with confidence. But you reminded me then.
People who are pretending to be friendly but are in fact intrusively offering their opinions on how you look. Yeah. You're so beautiful. You don't need to do this. It's like, don't tell me what I need to do.
Yeah, quick, put it back on. But when I was about 11, I was an extra in a TV series, just randomly. That they were filming it in my town, so they let me be an extra. And Angus Deaton was one of the actors, and I thought I went around and just got everyone's autograph once. But later on, when I was like, "Hey, I think I met that guy," and I was showing my friend, I was like, "Oh, I got his autograph twice," which must have meant that I went round and then just came back to him and went, "Excuse me, sir, can I have your autograph?" And he's just like, why? But he did it anyway, so I sold it.
This is the question, is whether he had been approached by enough people that he'd forgotten, or whether he was indulging an extreme fan.
I was listening to Empire, your show.
Empire's in the third in the trilogy, or Mythos is in the one I did last?
No, the third in the trilogy. I have also listened to Mythos in the last couple of days, but kind of been mainlining. But no, it's just because the Home and Away story came up in Empire, and so you never quite know how much truth there is to these stories, obviously, when they appear in a stand-up show. So it's just so nice to hear that story come up organically, that just to know that did really happen, that the Home and Away cast
Or
there.
Alice is really committed to that thing.
Yeah.
Really committed.
Yeah, I created a lie in which I went on a weird sailing boat in the 90s.
You've just got a wall of post-its with all your material ever just in front behind the camera that you can just call on at any moment there.
Don't want to ruin the magic. Don't want to ruin the magic of comedy.
No, it's a true one. There's one of them that's famous now, so I should find it. She was on X Factor. Delta Goodrem, I think, was in that cast. Pretty sure she was that cast.
What I love about it, the way you finish that bit in the show is by saying, what, Toadfish, if that is your real name, and just wait for the people in the crowd that are going to get so angry because it's a Neighbours character.
Yeah. But,
well, that was one of the things I realized when I went to the UK for the first time, is most people only know Australia via Neighbours and Home and Away. So that's always funny to me. Because it's like us knowing you through the Bill, which we do. Like we watch the Bill here in Australia. That's our afternoon after school.
That we've never been on a boat with the cast of the Bill, sadly.
Right. Yeah, I'm so jealous. When you started doing comedy, how does it compare to what you're doing now, the stand-up? Is there a big difference, or is it the same but you've improved it, or were you just brilliant in the first instance, or can you see the development?
Yes, I am not naturally funny. I think I'm naturally interested in stuff and quite quick, but one of the reasons that I love comedy so much is because it's a solution to the crippling fear of failure that I feel a lot. I'm very afraid of failure, and comedy was the first thing where I really understood, and it's an important lesson I think you can learn it in other spheres than comedy, but it sort of came home to me with doing comedy, is that you cannot get good without being bad, that you must fail. Failure is a necessary part of the process of improving. So I will never be as funny. You know, there's people who get a laugh before they even touch the microphone. I don't have that natural talent. But on the bright side, it means that I know that everything I have, I worked really, really hard for. So that's very satisfying.
That's interesting, because I wouldn't have guessed you'd say that. I kind of feel like you are quite naturally, or it feels like you're naturally funny, but that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm naturally pleasant to be around. Like, I don't think I'm a downer, but I was never a class clown or anything like that.
But being a lawyer, you would think, for me, I'm not academic at all, so that's really impressive to me. So to think that someone like you has a fear of failing, which is probably my fear as well, and I'm quite an anxious person, which I don't want to be, but I am. So I kind of feel like, oh man, even if I became a lawyer, I'd still be like this.
I mean, lawyers are way more anxious than anyone you could possibly imagine. Success is never a cure to the fear of failure. Like it just isn't. If you think about it, it really. So I remember having a really bad day at work, and my brother was away. He used to work in the same building, and he said, "You go visit my friend Nick," because I was weeping, and we had these glass offices so everyone could see you through the walls, and like you'd fog up the glass. And so I went to my brother's friend Nick, who I hadn't seen since high school. I knocked on his door, and he slid it open, and he took one look at my face, weeping in the office, and he just rolled his office chair, opened a drawer, and it was full of tea, and he was like, "Don't worry, it happens all the time." Like the whole place is full of miserable people. I once got a migraine where like half my face went numb, and I was panicking about it, and the lady next door just said, "Oh no, that happens to everyone."
Wow.
Like, there definitely being a lawyer is not a cure for anxiety, partly because your whole job as a lawyer, I don't know if you know what the process of being a lawyer is like, but any contract is saying, okay, these two people agree to do these things, and here are all the things that could possibly go wrong. You're constantly looking for flaws. You're constantly looking for the worst case scenario. It creates a really, like, if you already have an anxious and depressive personality, it can really cultivate that, because you're always looking for the cracks And you're motivated by the fear of failure. If you don't do it right, your client will lose millions of dollars, and that comes back on you.
So did that help you in comedy? Because it's not the same, but there's a similar stress on you, isn't there, when you're on stage and you're like, this could go two ways?
I think it's a completely different kind of stress, because comedy is like, being a lawyer is like marathon stress. It's grinding, it's constant, your cortisol level is constantly raised, and you wake up every morning feeling dread, and you go to sleep every night worrying. Comedy is more like high intensity interval training for stress. You have these big peaks and big troughs. You're on stage, there's the adrenaline, then you get off stage and you relax, or spend the rest of the night kicking yourself about what you could have done differently. But it is much more up and down, and I find that for me, or for my psychological setup, that's a much healthier exercise program for my adrenal glands.
I better stop asking questions, so I feel like I've taken over.
Yeah, shut up now, Tandy.
Yeah, sorry. It's really interesting.
I'm just going to say, Tandy started asking questions before Toby's even introduced himself. So.
I'm so sorry, Toby. At least it wasn't
Alice,
me, Phil. I always forget Phil.
Yeah, I'm not
Phil, to some degree. But do you want to add an extra sentence?
I mean, first of all, thanks so much for agreeing to come on here. This is really good.
My pleasure.
I'm Phil. I'm living in South London. Was doing reasonably regular stand-up, but also doing a bit of teaching on the side, and now only teaching and doing no stand-up. So, that's all introductions, isn't it?
You really sold yourself there, Phil.
I know. Oh,
yeah.
Look, I mean, I was just reading your bookshelf. I was reading your bookshelf behind you, and you've done some very, very nice placement of Twilight Breaking Dawn behind you there, I think.
I've got the it's the box set of Angel. No. So it is vampires, but it's not Twilight.
A different, yeah. Well, there you go. Not even a book. I wonder if it's more
all DVDs.
legitimate.
I just would like to show off.
Well, just so you know,
medium of DVDs.
Just so you know, it looks like you're reading Twilight Breaking Dawn. In case you've had any business meetings or teaching things in front of that background, in case any of your students have seen you sitting in front of that background, just so you know, they think that you're super into Robert Pattinson. Which, by the way, I am, not because I watched Twilight, but because he was in a GQ interview, and it's quite possibly one of the funniest things I've ever read. His recipe for handheld pasta.
Handheld pasta.
It's incredible. I highly recommend you looking up the GQ interview with Robert Pattinson, where he tells you his recipe for handheld pasta, because it's impeccable comedy writing.
Okay.
Just going to write that down, because I do love a bit of handheld food generally. I mean, I love a burrito, for example. Let me introduce me. I'm Toby. I did comedy on and off for about 10 years, and then decided finally that I was going to do an Edinburgh show in 2020. So that went really well.
Tell her what it was about, Toby.
Was it? So the title of the I've mentioned this every podcast, a bit like you do, really. It was called Existence is Futile. And it was about how if we don't change what we're doing now, something like a global pandemic is going to wipe out what we do and force us to change. So,
well, you know what they say, the trick to comedy is
tell the future.
It's timing.
Oh, sorry, damn it. Didn't see that coming.
I was just about to say to Andy, do you want to talk about Greek mythology or something? But you've gone. No, you're back.
Good call.
I went to the Bacchus suite, which I've started calling my kitchen after the Roman god of wine, Bacchus. So, because that's the only reason I go to the kitchen now. Do I want to talk about Greek mythology? Oh, can I tell you a story?
Is it a Greek myth?
No, it's not quite. But so I was, as one of the things that I do, I was walking around town yesterday with a couple of guys who I'm sort of trying to journey with. They're quite young, early 20s, and they're struggling a little bit, and I'm just trying to speak some truth and life into their lives. And they've never, neither of them have ever really been encouraged by parents or family. So I was trying to just encourage them a bit, but I'm from a very different world to them, as a very middle class sort of individual. At one point I said, let's play a game. Let's play some games. And I said, tell me something that is both brilliant and boring at the same time, that simultaneously manages to hold in tension the realities of being brilliant and boring. And I thought this would be a really good game for us to play, because it would help them to, think creatively. And they're both early 20s, and the lad said, okay, yeah, well, sort of having, microwavable pizza every night is brilliant and boring. I was like, yeah, that's good, actually, that I can see that. And then the girl said, yeah, not having to go to work because I don't have a job. So yeah, okay, that's I can see it's brilliant. She said it's great not to have to go to work, but I don't have any money. We've got no money. And the thing was that I tried to use it to encourage them, but they both now look really depressed because they were doing the same things every day and they didn't have any money. And it also really made me feel incredibly middle class, because I'd said the Iliad as something that was brilliant and boring. They were talking about their life choices. And I almost said To Kill a Mockingbird, but I'd been reading the Iliad, so I said that instead. And so, yeah, I just thought I am not cut out for looking after people in any way.
Alice, you said you really loved the law and the fact that it does such, it's so integral to society. And you seem to really have a passion for that. And a lot of your comedy is quite political as well. Do you hope to bring any change through your comedy and to really highlight things and get people thinking through that?
Here's an interesting thing. I don't do a lot of current affairs or party politics in my stand-up. I tend to reserve that for like the Bugle or the Last Post, or kind of things that are explicitly satirical. And it's quite funny to me that I don't think of the satire as necessarily causing any change. I don't think most satire is effective if what you want to do with it is change the world. Occasionally you have something really incisive and it can make a difference, but mostly what satire is a recognition among like-minded people that the world is ridiculous. So you can get some relief from how tragic the news is by being like, yeah, it is silly. And I'm glad that there are other people that recognize that it's this silly. Whereas with my stand-up, I tend to think of it more as kind of human political in a way. And that's where I guess I have more ambition for changing things. I don't think changing policy. I think at its best, the kind of stand-up that I do can change the way people think about the world, individual people, and the way that they approach the world. And it can make them feel more human, and it can make the people around them feel more human. And that's at its best, and that's obviously my ambition and my goal. But I do think that that's a way to change the world, a very small incremental way, but I think it's also, can be an effective way. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's
I'm
great.
not going to go into politics anytime soon, but I don't want to change people's minds so much as I'd like to change their approach to things or their attitude to something. I think it's very hard to change people's positions.
That's where comedy is the most effective way of changing people's minds, because you're not telling them that they're wrong. You're showing them that this is a way to think about it as well, and it changed. And then because they're laughing at the same time, they're also a bit more amenable to thinking about something in an upside down manner or a different approach to things.
Yeah, you can show them a different even if it's a different approach. So I did a 6-part series for the ABC here, our national broadcaster, called Troll Play. And that was almost purely for myself, because I'd been writing jokes for a television show called The Project, which is a light entertainment news show. And the social media girl went on holiday for 6 weeks, and it was before Edinburgh. So I said, oh, I'll take the job for 6 weeks. And she was fielding, and I don't know how she did it. She did it for years, that job. But for 6 weeks, I was just fielding the most vitriolic hate for this panel of newscasters / entertainers. One of them was Muslim, one of them was a woman. And of course, just the cascade of horrible, horrible, horrible things that came in every day. And I got really I got upset about it every time I would leave work after receiving these hundreds of emails. And they weren't even directed at me, but I'd leave work and I'd walk out and I'd get on the tram and I'd think, is it you? Like, are you the people who are sending, who here? Like, it really did a number on my head. And so I thought, I have to make this fun. Like, I have to figure out how to translate this feeling into something joyous. And so I did this Troll Play podcast, where every time after that I got one of these letters, I would think, oh, how can I use that? How can that be fun? How can I make that into something funny? Or what angle do I need to take on this to turn it into joy? And so I think for me, that was an experience where just shifting my approach to something changed the impact that it had on me. And I've forgotten the question.
Well, if I can have a follow-up, because I love the bugle for Andy's pun runs. And I noticed you'd started to take that, you started to emulate that and sneak in your own pun runs from time to time. And I was wondering if you're also gonna start to emulate any other things from Andy. I was wondering if you were gonna steal his hair, his unusual hairstyle, or anything like that.
Well, look, I always liked puns. I used to play games with my friends at university, which were just swapping puns back and forth. So I feel like that comes from a natural place. But of course, you don't really want to encourage Andy that much.
No.
I'm very glad that he's successful as he is now. It was very funny when he got the hosting of the news quiz job, because my first thought was like, he's been so good for so long. I think most people who know him would assume that he had already had that job at some point.
Yeah.
So I'm very glad that he's getting some recognition now.
Yeah, I think one thing that's brilliant about what Andy's done with the news quiz is he has brought so much of himself to it from day one and has changed the format in sort of little subtle ways that you kind of don't notice at first. Then you suddenly realize this show it's not the same as it was. Whereas I think before that, even with the guest presenters, there was, it was sort of just different people, but doing the same thing. But Andy
There's so much momentum to to an institution like that. And you feel it even as a guest or even as a writer, in that you're like, I write for Zoltz on it. And you sit down and they say, well, here's the story. What question shall we do? And it's very hard to resist the urge to write the question in the news quiz style. Who's been getting wet this week? Like that. It's a very hard thing to resist, because you're comfortable and familiar with that. And so finding a different angle or a different game for that story is hard. And then also talking to Andy about the show, the guests almost can't register it if you change the format on them, because what they're used to is the news quiz style of guessing it wrong, guessing it wrong, guessing it right. Like that's the rhythm of it. That's the tradition of it. And so shifting the rules of the game slightly in order to make it a more interesting thing is harder than it sounds. You can't just do it differently. You have to, as you say, do it in small incremental ways.
I think, particularly because the presenter's job really is not to pull focus, and I think he is so good then, obviously, and the team of writers, obviously, at sort of giving him that those little bits that are just his, but it still somehow keeps it in that quiz format. Somehow Andy's doing something different to certainly what a traditional presenter would be.
Yes, which I think is super fun and super interesting. I'm interested to see what it'll mean for the next host, whether he will be in that role for long enough to shape the whole show and the vibe of the show, and whoever comes in will be doing Andy Zaltzman, or whether it'll revert to form. I think that's going to be, just in an objective way, a super fascinating thing to hear.
Right, I'm going to do a live edit now. Andy Kind, sit forward and look interested. Because I know you are interested, but it's bad body language. Sit forward. Thank you.
Get yourself a bolster cushion next time.
I'm not even sitting down.
He looks like he's got the heat on, at least. He's not wrapped up in
I've
3
got the
coats.
heating on. Bear in mind, it's nearly midnight in Chesterfield and it's snowing outside. I'm just so cozy. I'm so cozy.
Sorry.
Wine has that effect,
I
doesn't
often
it?
have to tell him to do that. Sorry.
I've done a full day's work before we start this, bear in mind.
I didn't realize this was being video casted. I would have put makeup on.
Yeah, this is live on BBC.
We get better results from people not realizing that that this is being simulcast. Pretty much. I mean, it gets as far as California, I think, and then it stops because they're, I think they're up now.
When they took the bill off in this country, they didn't have anything to fill in for it, so we've just kind of run with it a little bit. And so this is live.
Yes.
Have you found it harder to write satire in the last, let's say, 3-4 years, for example, than before? Have you what kind of challenges have you found in trying to make what's already feels quite ridiculous as a world that we live in to be even more ridiculous, to help people process just how absurd things are?
Yes, I have found it incredibly hard. It's so boring. Like, satire is at its best when it makes a concise, razor-sharp point. It sort of slides into a crack in the world and opens it out and shines the light through it. I think that is where satire is sort of very razor-thin slices of hypocrisy. It shows something up. It is incredibly hard to do something insightful, incisive, pointed, subtle about a character like Donald Trump. He does not invite a rapier thrust. He is a massive gorilla the size of a building, swinging his arms around, and he invites crude comedy because that's the things that he is doing are so crude and overblown and grotesque and tasteless. It's very hard to do something good in response because it's shaped by what he's doing. Really what you want is a kind of a moustache twirling, very subtle villain, and that you can have an honorable fight with. But yeah, it's so hard. And there's so many people writing so much stuff about him that it's very hard to think of something original and interesting to say. If I never have to write another Trump joke again, I will be happy. There's a reason I set the last post in an alternate universe. Then there's also this thing where, like with Brexit or something like that, you'll write the joke that you think, that's the joke, right? That's the joke. I'm happy with that joke. That's, for me, that encapsulates the thing about it that was bothering me. And then you have to do it again the next day or the next week. So like for me, it was Brexit. It was Brexit never has so much hot air lifted so few balloons. And then I was like, I'm done. I don't need to write another Brexit joke. And then with Trump, it was, I wouldn't take an IOU from Trump if he wrote it on the money he owed me. Done. And then you write that joke and you finish like that. It's like whatever, 50 jokes in. You're like, that's the one that does the job of saying how I feel about Donald Trump. I don't want to have to do it again. It makes it feel very futile and depressing because one of the sort of shocking things about Trump was that everything he did was very samey. It was all different and surprising and shocking and startling, but it was extremely, at the same time, very monotonous. You knew he was going to say something outrageous. You knew he was going to say something offensive. He did it like clockwork, strategically and tactically and on purpose. which was a very frustrating thing to contend with, because as a satirist, then you feel like they're just pulling your strings. The news cycle is revealed to be a knee-jerk response rather than anything thoughtful. And so as a satirist, you respond to the news cycle. The news cycle, if it's responding to a clever politician who's manipulating it, you start to feel a little bit unautonomous.
It's interesting.
Oh, I'm sorry to bring it down like that at the end.
No, I think I do. Look, John, I think I do incredibly well. Let's just put that out there.
Yes.
So, so the first show of yours that is sort of has been in existence, certainly publicly, that I'm aware of, was Savage. I was just interested, like, was that your first full-length show?
No, it wasn't, but it was the first one that I toured.
Mm-hmm.
So before that, I did, well, I don't know if it was a full-length show, probably a 45-minute show called Everyone's a Winner, open brackets, if the prize is death, close brackets, about why I quit being a lawyer. And it's interesting to listen back to that because it's got a lot of kind of the themes that emerge in my later work and some early prototypes of those jokes. And before that, I did a split bill with a friend. Again, it's interesting to go back to that early stuff. I started off not quite knowing what my voice was, but I think we all do that.
I loved your thing. I'm going to get it wrong now, but not all murderers are mothers, but all mothers are murderers. And then that's what it said. I loved that concept. That was so good. So funny.
Thank you.
So
yeah, I have to give credit to the original idea to a science fiction author, Lois McMaster-Bujold, who wrote the line, "With every birth, you bring one death into the world." And I was like, so that was very, yeah. I mean, it's true though. If you're thinking in law, you have what's called the but-for test. And but for your mother giving birth to you, you'd have never died.
Okay, Tandy's crazy question. So we've got a little jingle that goes here. Tandy's crazy question.
Questions.
It's always as good as that.
Tandy's crazy question.
If you woke up tomorrow and your body had regressed to that of a 2-year-old, yet your mind was the same, what would the newspaper headline be in 6 months' time and why?
I don't remember much of my childhood, so I couldn't place myself in that timeline anyway. And I thought it wouldn't be fair to have to look up what happened then, because if I woke up having regressed, I wouldn't be able to look up what's going on. It's too late, you know? So I just realized that it would probably be something like toddler develops inordinate amount of anxiety from the lack of touch screens. That would just be...
I mean, I can sort of vaguely remember. I think my earliest memory was from when I was 2, but I'm not. I think science says that that's impossible. But I'm sure I can remember seeing my brother shortly after he was born. So, you know, putting myself in that position. I think probably it depends on what publication the headline's in. I think probably just to take a kind of realistic stab. If I go for the Daily Express, then the headline's probably nothing to do with me and just something about Princess Diana. I'm going for the points here. I want to get it right.
2.5-year-old wins spelling bee, I think. I'd want to start off small and start building it. I wouldn't want to go straight in with wins thing like that.
The Voice.
The Voice, yeah, particularly as even now my voice isn't great. I'm not quite sure as a 2.5-year-old it was much better. So what's Dan dressed as today? We'll have to do a little edit.
Okay, I didn't expect this. I'm so sorry.
Well, how does the music go?
Nah, it's always Pachelbel's canon. Da 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 da.
Anyone guess what Dan is dressed as today?
It's not Marilyn Monroe.
It's not Marilyn Monroe. No. Any guesses?
Are you a Barbie doll?
I'm not a Barbie doll. No.
Are you
I
a
am
really bad I suppose page girl or like flower girl doing your own confetti because you just thought this was all about you because you haven't really interpreted the wedding ceremony in the right way?
Well,
The
you're
flower
on the
girls
right...
do throw the petals.
They do.
Yeah, they do.
And they throw it over themselves because they didn't realise that the wedding is
Because
about
they're
the big
very
one in the
young.
white dress. And they just think that everyone's going, oh, isn't she lovely? It's, well, it must be me.
I'm surprised you guys didn't get this. Of course, this week, again, I'm dressed as a burglar. This is slightly more of a long play burglar, in that it would involve getting married to someone and then being let in the house before robbing them. But the benefit of that is that no one's going to believe that it would be the bride that would be burgling, and secondly, I'll already have a key to the house, so I won't have to take any burglary tools either.
You don't have to carry any of the stuff anywhere because it's already at your house.
Exactly. I'm glad you're on the same wavelength. That's brilliant. And I managed not to get any petals in my drink, which I'm most pleased about.
That's really good. Dan's really good at puns. Dan's really good at puns, remember?
Yeah.
Just going to point that out.
Genius toddler vomited every time he was breastfed.
Wait. Who's getting breastfed at 2.5? That is...
That's why I use past tense, you see. So not every time he is breastfed. Again, this is the tabloids. I didn't write these headlines, I just read them.
I do actually know.
Toddler vomited every time he was breastfed. So there's almost like a rhyming couplet there as well. So, but the idea of
you did say you were middle class.
Yeah, incredibly so. So I mean, and to the point where I can't really relate because I was bottle fed. That's how middle class my family was. The idea of any kind of physical contact was anathema to my family. So I was bottle. This is all true.
That's the real reason you were vomiting. The thought of physical contact.
So the idea of having to see my mother's boobs with like my adult mind.
Okay. Alice?
That was your question though, Tandy. That was the question. Like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do?
I mean, there's plenty of kids that have colic, so I don't know why it would make a headline. Secondly, Tandy, I like that this question is predicated on the idea that there will be newspapers in 6 months. I think that's hopeful.
Yeah.
And positive. I think it would probably be something like 2.5-year-old in trouble for making fun of Elon Musk. Because every time I make fun of him, there are some people who get very angry about it. And I think he's mostly fine. Like, I generally try to build in at least some praise into the jokes I make about him because he's done some great stuff, but he's also very silly.
Okay, question number 2. If you had to jump from an aeroplane without a parachute and from a great height, where would you choose to land? And I'm going to go backwards now and start with Alice, if that's okay.
If I had to jump without a parachute from an aeroplane from a very great height, ideally I would be directly above a large zeppelin. Then that would be less deathy than the others. Although there's that story about the Gurkhas in World War II being asked to parachute in over enemy lines, and the major or general or whatever comes and takes the captain aside and said, I know you have a reputation for never refusing any mission, And the Gurkha captain says, yeah, we don't refuse missions. And he said, but I thought I'd take you aside and ask you, just not in front of your men, in case you want to quietly turn it down. So we want you to fly in under the radar and jump out of the planes. We want you to jump out of the planes, and it'll be behind enemy lines, but we have to go in under the radar. So it'll be from 200 feet. And the Gurkha captain says, we'll do it, okay, if you let us do it from 100 feet. And the Major General says, what, the parachutes wouldn't have time to open? And the Gurkha captain goes, oh, we have parachutes.
Wow.
Very boring Tandy fact. Tandy fact? Yes, Tandy fact. I don't know why I questioned the word fact. Tandy fact, I used to be looked after by Gurkha guards when I was a child. Yeah, they're lovely.
Nice fact.
Andy,
thank you.
Yeah, did you like it?
Yeah.
Yeah, if they draw their sword, they have to draw blood, but I don't know if that's true. Is that true?
I think that's samurais, isn't it? I thought that was samurais.
I don't know.
Because Gurkhas have knives, not swords, anyway.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. They have those little knives. Yeah. Anyway, Andy.
Oh, probably the 1890s, because I like the clothing.
In some blancmange, because I think it would be soft, and mainly just the word blancmange it's just a great word. If you're going to do something like that and survive, and it's going to be a story, I just want to be using the word blancmange at as many opportunities as possible. Blancmange.
Vodcast fact, we've actually had that as an answer before. Blancmange. I don't know how to spell it.
Dan uses it for pretty much. He didn't use it for the last question, but every other question before and since is going to be something about blancmange.
Blancmange.
Okay,
There's actually two spellings of blancmange. It's been transliterated two ways. So you've got blancmange as in blank mange, which means white eat from the French, and then you've got blancmange as in blank mange, ch instead of ge, which means white sea. Neither of them are that relevant to what it actually is, which is gross jelly. But
I've been struggling with this. I think I I'll just go with volcano. Just land in a volcano, like
just get it over with.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to go anyway, Gollum's death is one of the most dramatic, and I'd take that.
I like that you've got Elrond and Isildur just arguing as you just like drop past them.
Yeah, that's what I mean, at least then I could picture that moment and be like, huh.
Yeah.
But, and I mean, the films portray it beautifully, where Gollum he's got the ring and he's smiling as he's like melting into the fires of Mount Doom. So he was happy. Let's not forget that. He died happy.
Yeah. Oh, Toby, but you can't do a Gollum impression, can you? So I don't think you can do that. Sorry.
No.
Yeah. Question number 3. A town in Slovenia has. I'm sorry, Phil. Did you want to answer?
I mean, yes. Thank you, Tandy, for keeping up the tradition. What I appreciate is you've given me the chance to answer this time, whereas last time. Yeah,
because you're terrible at asking me. You just sit and take it. And
last time, I spent time planning answers, and then you didn't even come back to me.
You had to write them in by postcard. Didn't you?
Absolutely. I think possibly just directly into a fridge, because I remember in the Indiana Jones, in the 4th film, he jumps into a fridge and survives a nuclear explosion. So if you can survive a nuclear explosion in a fridge, I'm sure you can probably survive a fall from a plane. As long as you pull the door closed as you land, I think you're all fine.
So you'd be in a fridge?
Well, I'd land into the fridge, close the door as I go.
Yeah.
Thus, sort of stifling the impact somehow. I don't know. If it works for nuclear explosions, it's bound to work for long drops.
A town in Slovenia has created a festival in your honor. What did you do to deserve this? And what do they do at the festival to celebrate you?
my greatest feature, and I'm happy to say this, is just how much I can make anything sound like a fact. Like whatever. Did you know, for example, that a pineapple isn't a fruit?
Isn't it?
Yes, no, I don't. I think it's
Well,
a
I
fruit still,
believe it.
but yeah, but I'm pretty
The
sure
banana
that
actually a nut.
No way.
Yeah. No,
Wow.
you're right.
Okay, well, upstaged by my own blancmange, but so I think the festival would be about my voice talent, and what they would do is try to be convincing other people of facts. Festival of facts.
Yes.
And everyone loves alliteration, so basically it's the one that wins is the one that convinces the most people of their fact. They've chosen something.
It's not a competition, Toby. I think you're.
It's a festival. Well, it's got tombolas and.
Haven't you been to the Edinburgh Festival, Tandy?
There's always
competition.
In every festival, there's only ever one winner.
Okay.
See? That's a fact.
I would have married the evil moustache twirling town mayor and drowned him in blancmange before burgling his house, and everyone would have to eat blancmange. Blancmange.
I have. I eradicated the village of aggressive vegans, and they've erected a statue in my honor of me shooting a courgette through the head with a like a Glock. So I've got the courgette. So that's that has actually that's gone viral.
A festival in my honor. I don't know if there's anything that I have that's particularly celebratory. Maybe a festival of awkward replies. That I could do. I was having brunch the other day, and Sacha Baron Cohen and Isla Fisher came into the cafe, and Isla Fisher said, "You have beautiful hair," and I said, "Thanks, I guess." What I meant was like, thank you. I didn't do it. Like, it just is like, it's not my fault, but it just came across like I really ungraciously didn't want a compliment from.
Did you say? Did you say you signed my poster in 1991?
I don't think she was in Home and Away. Maybe she was.
She was.
She was. No, she definitely was.
At some point, I don't know whether she was
But
there.
not in 1991.
Well, I don't know. A long time ago now, Tobes, Phil, whatever your name is.
I think it was late 90s, I think.
Have I done everyone for that one?
Shannon, her character was.
Shannon, that was it, yeah.
All right, Phil. Flipping out, mate.
Came in with her brother. With her brother Curtis.
This is the kind of research that Phil does, is that he goes
I've never even watched
very
it,
deep.
yeah.
Goes very deep into a particular, not sure if it's true bit about one of your shows, Alice, and then goes really headlong.
Okay.
I've
Phil,
got a whole display where I've tried to work out exactly which photographs you must have, just based on the dates.
Well, maybe it wasn't Delta Goodrum. Maybe it was the Holly Valance. Holly Valance?
Yeah, Holly Valance. Yeah. Delta Goodrum was in Neighbours. I didn't want to say anything because I don't know much about the bill, and you probably do. But like, I didn't want to.
I never watched TV as a kid. To this day, I still can't watch television unless it's with somebody else. I never watch television alone. So my tastes in television are entirely dictated by the tastes of those around me.
Well, I only know because Isla Fisher used to come around to my house and we used to watch Home and Away together. So that's how I know so much about it. But,
always complimenting your hair, wasn't she?
Yeah, she loved it.
Time. That's her catchphrase.
I mean, it's not bragging that I went to. Well, I mean, it wouldn't normally be bragging that I went to a cafe, but I realize that you guys are in the UK right now, so that is kind of
yeah.
So
yeah.
The brag isn't that it was Sacha Baron Cohen and Isla Fisher. It was that you were in a cafe.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It's pretty great.
us.
Yeah.
Phil, tell us your festival and make it snappy.
All right, sorry. Well, I have actually been to Slovenia. I went in 2008. And what I can remember is we stayed somewhere where we were served trout that swam in the stream outside. That was really nice. We were served goat that was running around the previous day in the field next to the place. And then the person that owned it had some weird obsession with the German football manager. Those are the three big things that I think the festival would really focus on, just around my visit in 2008. And there's big floats just around, trouts, goats, and Joachim Löw.
Yeah, thank goodness that Joachim Löw hasn't been turned into a dessert yet. That's all I can say.
Invent a new word. And I'll just let you all interrupt each other for this one, because my brain's getting tired now of remembering who's next. And to ignore Phil, of course.
Yeah. So Phil, if you want to get in now.
Get in now.
Get in. Invent a new word. Last time it was invent a new colour. I struggled tremendously with that. This is.
I'll start.
Okay,
It's
go, Dan.
the new word is threg, and that's when you wake up and you've got a dead leg and you get out of bed and you fall over because you've got a dead leg, and you get up again not quite realizing that it's dead and gone to sleep, and you try and walk again and then fall over again. So the dead leg is called a threg. A dead leg in the morning is called a threg.
Very good.
Brilliant.
Mine is plankton.
I think that's been done.
No, I've just done a lot of work in the background leading up to this. So
Okay.
Touche.
yeah,
Your time to shine.
yeah. So plankton is mine, and if you've already heard of it, well, that makes me so happy. But they with mine. That's mine.
Phil, that's the kind of research you need to do in advance in future.
Yeah. Well, Phil would have known it if he hadn't spent so much time watching Home and Away from the early 90s.
Let me go. And this is maybe a bit more emotional and heartfelt, but I think the word would be something like a hug, which is what we'll all do once we're able to actually embrace again, everyone.
Please don't say that when you hug me.
Yeah, well, I'll say it internally. That's what I'll be saying.
Yeah.
Just
okay.
imagine that when that happens, that's what's going on inside.
Okay.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful moment, Toby.
My word is time travel.
Yeah,
Both a
very
word
good one.
and a machine.
Yeah, that's perfect. That is perfect. Well done, Alice. Yeah, well done.
Okay.
Any news on those AirPods, by the way, Alice? Naughty.
Phil, did you say anything?
No, just my something's happened to my microphone. So
Oh, that's what they all say.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
we
just
can
expect
hear.
Oh yeah,
me
go
to
ahead.
ignore you.
Like Phil has left the meeting. Yeah. Oh, sorry. The
no, it's
milkman's
fine.
here.
It's fine. It's on. It's on. It's on.
Oh, sorry. There's a parcel arrived.
My microphone had changed.
Oh, my grandmother's died again.
I've got the meaning. I'm just trying to think of what the actual word is, but something like the meaning is whenever you confuse someone who was in Home and Away with someone who was in Neighbours and vice versa. So I don't know if anyone wants to come in with the what is the correct word for that, but
That is actually a thing, though, as well. Like, I mean, even before this podcast, I've had that happen before.
yeah, of course it is. We've all
Yeah.
had that. Apart
Yeah,
from
you're not
anyone who
special at
actually
it.
grew up in Australia, but all Brits
not-
have had that.
Just
Hey,
something
look,
like
I've had
with Bill.
it too. I don't think I've ever watched an episode of either of those shows.
How about sopa doping?
Yes, that's good. And you see,
Like roper dope, but
Yeah.
sopa dope.
absolutely, because you've had so
Sopa
much
doping.
time. You've had so
That's
much
brilliant.
time off.
End meeting for all. That's it. That's that. Show it the gate. That's the
I was just going to say, since you've had so much time off, since you started obviously Plankton such a while ago, you've still got that energy in your locker to just come up with that.
Well,
what about that thing? What about that thing where there's an actor who looks like another actor but worse, but they get cast in the roles of the less good? What about Dud Ringer for that?
Oh yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dud
Well,
Ringer and Soap-a-Dope. Like, when will these be in the dictionary, Toby?
Well, I've got my submissions in, so hopefully by Friday.
Yes, well done everyone for that round of Tandy's crazy questions, and the winner of this, I would say this week, but I don't know when it is. Do we record every month or every week, or I don't know. Anyway, yes, and the winner is Alice.
Yay!
Yay!
I only agreed to be on if you'd let me win.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on the Vodcast. It's been so lovely to have you on as a guest, and you're such an interesting person, and it's lovely to have a woman, because we haven't actually had many women on the Vodcast. I don't know why, but yeah, it's and another Australian friend to add to the roster as well. So yeah, thank you so much.
I was going to say, what would you like to promote, Alice? What can we stick up links to and things?
We don't get loads of views, but we're still promoting.
But both of our viewers, what would they?
I have many different things. I have a daily podcast, a monthly podcast, weekly podcast. I have, I think patreon.com/Alice Fraser is the place to go. Not just because I'm trying to lure you onto a paid platform, but because it has all of the things that are free and all of the things that you can pay for. That's my kind of one-stop shop. Patreon.com/Alice Fraser.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks so
Enjoy
much.
your whole day that you have ahead of you.
Thank you. Thanks for
can
having
go.
me.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Alice.
Bye.
Thanks,
Take
Alice.
care,
Thank
Alice.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye, Alice. Bye.
Yay.
Yay, we did it.
What a wonderful person.
Lovely.
Oh, great questions, Tandy.
Well done, Phil.
Oh, thanks. And good questions to you too, Phil. Wasn't it great having Alice Fraser on the podcast? That was amazing.
It
Thank you
was
so much,
lovely.
Phil.
What a lovely person.
What a lovely person. So eloquent. I do admire her ability to put things into words, because I think that really is my massive obstacle in life, is that I'm very clever, but it's indoors.
I think one thing she does is she makes you feel like your question must have been amazing, because her answer is so...
Yeah. Your question could be like, bumblebees and ducks. And she's like, that's interesting you say that. And then like an hour of
It's amazing. On the nature of Darwinian evolution, you've got the bumblebees and the ducks. And yes, what can we extrapolate from that foundation?
You need
Like
to
every guest we have could then just be another presenter the next time, and we just slowly build up.
Yeah.
So it's just...
I mean, wouldn't that be some kind of... You'd have to call it the Snowball podcast, wouldn't you? Where every podcast, the previous guest is then part of the regular panel. Anyway,
it would be good, and we wouldn't have to present. We'd have to do less work.
Yeah, like each time you just extend it to the point where there's just so many people. You've got 2,000 people. I'm assuming we do 2,000 episodes, obviously, on this Zoom, trying to vie for attention just for a moment.
Or it's like winner stays on, and like the worst, the worst one from every podcast like goes. So let's say I had to go this time, and Alice stays on, and then next time like Dan has to go, but like Fred stays.
You can have the two viewers vote on who goes.
And no one knows, like the moment Tandy goes, no one knows what the podcast is about. You've got to be there.
I like the idea that at the end of the podcast, you'd vote who won the podcast, even though it's just a chat, and then, or vote who lost the podcast.
Who would vote?
Everyone gets a vote on who lost the podcast, and then whoever loses isn't allowed on the next one.
People in the podcast vote, or the people watching vote?
No, the people in the podcast.
People in the us, plus guests. So the guest would always win, which means that they would then be obliged to be on the next one.
Would they have to do Tandy's crazy question? Would it be like Fred's crazy questions, or would
Yeah,
it, or would
exactly.
he just take
Yeah.
over and start doing stuff about drums? And
I think
Can
it
we
would
do
always
our-
be called Tandy's, just in honour of you, no matter
Tandy's
what.
crazy questions, even if
Yeah.
it's a bit about Fred's drums or Alice's law.
so it'd be
or-
like it'd be like Tandy's crazy
Tandy's
questions.
crazy questions.
Okay, which are the best drumsticks?
And imagine if you got like Keenan Thompson as a guest, who's just there for 13 seasons. Like he never leaves.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Can we do our goodbyes quick?
What's
Then
up
I
with
can
that?
then I can put on some clothes because I'm really cold.
Yeah.
Well,
I've been really cold for
We've
a long time.
We've all made interesting choices, Dan. You
Okay,
especially.
bye.
Bye.
Great
Thanks,
podcast,
everyone.
everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks for watching,
Bye.
viewers.
Bye.
Thanks, Alice.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Alice. Bye, guys. May the
Bye.
Lord have mercy on your soul.